The old wooden porch creaked a gentle rhythm as I settled into the worn swing beside Grandpa Joe. The late afternoon sun painted long shadows across the lawn, and the air hummed with the lazy buzz of cicadas. Grandpa Joe, a retired veteran of the Vietnam War, had agreed to finally share his story. Not just snippets, not just the funny anecdotes, but the whole thing. The highs, the lows, the parts that made him proud, and the parts that still haunted him. He wasn't a man of many words usually, but his eyes held a universe of stories. He'd always been there, a comforting presence, fixing my bike, teaching me to fish, patiently explaining the constellations. But the war, that was a closed book. Now, on the cusp of his 80th birthday, he seemed ready to open it. He cleared his throat, a low rumble that vibrated through the porch. It all started a long time ago, a different world, really, he began, his voice raspy but strong. I was just a kid, barely out of high school. Didn't know much about anything, except maybe baseball and girls. He chuckled softly, a sound that eased the tension in the air. Vietnam, it was just a word on the news then. Something happening far away. Didn't seem real. But then, the draft notice came. Suddenly, it was very real. He paused, his gaze drifting to the distant trees. I wasn't gung-ho, wasn't looking for a fight. But I felt, a duty. To my country, to my family. Everyone was doing their part, or so it seemed. He shifted in his seat, the swing groaning in protest. I didn't know it then, but that piece of paper changed everything. It set me on a path I never could have imagined. A path filled with both darkness and light. A path that would shape me into the man I am today. His hand, gnarled with age and experience, reached out and gently squeezed mine. Are you ready to hear it, grandson? It's a long story. I nodded, my heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. The sun dipped lower, casting the porch in deeper shadow, as Grandpa Joe began to recount his journey into the heart of the Vietnam War. A story of courage, loss, and ultimately, resilience. So, baseball and girls, huh? I chuckled, trying to lighten the mood. Grandpa Joe smiled, a genuine, warm smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. That's about all I was good for back then, he said, his voice tinged with nostalgia. Lived a simple life. Small town, everyone knew everyone. Summers were spent playing ball in the dusty fields, winters were for sledding down Miller's Hill. Never thought much about the world outside of our little bubble. He leaned back in the swing, his gaze fixed on a distant point in the yard. My dad worked at the local factory, made car parts. Mom stayed home, took care of me and my sister, Sarah. We weren't rich, but we always had food on the table and a roof over our heads. It was a good life, a peaceful life. I was a decent ballplayer, nothing special. Played shortstop. Had a pretty good arm. Dreamed of maybe playing college ball someday, but... He trailed off, the unspoken, but hanging heavy in the air. Girls, well, there was Mary Lou Thompson. Sweetest girl in town. We went steady for a couple of years. Thought I was in love. Probably was, in my own teenage way. He chuckled again, a softer, more wistful sound this time. We'd go to the movies on Saturday nights, sneak kisses in the back row. Simple pleasures. But then, everything changed. The war, it started creeping into our lives. At first, it was just stories on the news, like I said. But then, guys from town started getting drafted. Some came back, some didn't. The mood shifted. There was a sense of unease, a feeling that something bad was coming. He paused, taking a deep breath. I remember the day I got my draft notice like it was yesterday. It was a Tuesday. Hot, humid day. The letter was sitting on the kitchen table when I got home from baseball practice. My mom was crying. My dad just looked grim. I knew, in that moment, that my life would never be the same. He paused, his gaze meeting mine. That's when the boy I was died, and the soldier I would become was born. Basic training, Grandpa Joe said, the word sounding like a curse on his lips. That was something else. They took us boys, fresh off the farm, fresh out of high school, and tried to turn us into soldiers. It was brutal, son. Absolutely brutal. He described the endless drills, the screaming sergeants, the grueling physical exercises. Up before dawn, running until you puked, obstacle courses that seemed impossible. Learning to shoot, to march, to follow orders without question. They broke us down, he explained, his voice low. Stripped us of our individuality, our identities. They wanted us to be a unit, a machine. And they did a pretty good job of it. He remembered one sergeant in particular, a man named Sergeant Miller. He was a tough son of a gun, Grandpa Joe said, a hint of grudging respect in his voice. He never smiled, never showed any mercy. He pushed us to our limits, and then pushed us some more. But he knew what he was doing. He was preparing us for war. The training wasn't just physical, it was mental too. They were bombarded with propaganda, told that the enemy was evil, that they were fighting for freedom and democracy. We were young, impressionable, Grandpa Joe said. We believed it. Or at least, we tried to. He remembered the constant fear of failure, the pressure to perform, the humiliation of being yelled at in front of everyone. There were times I wanted to quit, he admitted. Times I thought I couldn't take it anymore. But I didn't. I kept going. I don't know why, maybe it was pride, maybe it was fear of disappointing my family. But I kept going. He learned to handle a rifle, to throw a grenade, to navigate through the jungle. He learned about tactics and strategy, about survival and combat. He learned to rely on his fellow soldiers, to trust them with his life. By the time we finished basic training, we were different people, he said. We were tougher, stronger, more disciplined. But we were also scared. We knew what was coming. We knew we were going to war. He paused, the silence hanging heavy in the air. And we knew that some of us wouldn't be coming back. Landing in Vietnam, Grandpa Joe continued, his voice taking on a faraway quality, was like stepping into another world. The heat, it hit you like a wall. Thick, heavy, suffocating. And the smell, a mix of burning vegetation, diesel fuel, and something else, something I can't quite describe. A smell of decay, of death. He described the chaotic scene at the airbase. Soldiers everywhere, milling around, loading and unloading equipment. Helicopters whirring overhead, kicking up dust and debris. The air thick with tension and anticipation. We were loaded onto trucks and driven to our base camp, he said. The landscape was unlike anything I'd ever seen. Lush green rice paddies, dense jungles, towering mountains. It was beautiful, in a way. But it was also dangerous. We knew the enemy could be anywhere, hiding in the shadows, waiting to strike. He remembered his first night in Vietnam. Lying in his bunk, listening to the sounds of the jungle. The chirping of insects, the croaking of frogs, the distant rumble of artillery fire. I couldn't sleep, he said. I was too scared. Too overwhelmed. I kept thinking about Mary Lou, about my family back home. I wondered if I'd ever see them again. The next few days were spent getting acclimated to the environment, learning the lay of the land, and receiving instructions from the seasoned veterans. They tried to prepare us for what we were about to face, he said. But nothing could really prepare you for the reality of war. He learned about the enemy, the Viet Cong. Their tactics, their weapons, their motivations. He learned about the local population, the Vietnamese people. Their culture, their customs, their struggles. I remember feeling a sense of confusion, he said. We were supposed to be helping these people, protecting them from communism. But it wasn't always clear who the enemy was, and who was on our side. It was a complicated situation, a confusing situation. He also remembered the fear. The constant, gnawing fear that never went away. The fear of being ambushed, the fear of being killed, the fear of letting his fellow soldiers down. I tried to be brave, he said. I tried to put on a good face. But inside, I was terrified. He paused, taking a deep breath. Looking back, he said, I don't think I was prepared for what was to come. Not really. No one could be. The first time I saw combat. Grandpa Joe's voice trailed off, his eyes clouding over with a distant, haunted look. He sat silent for a long moment, the only sound the gentle creaking of the porch swing. We were on patrol, he finally said, his voice barely a whisper. Just a routine patrol through the jungle. We'd been out for a few days, hadn't seen any sign of the enemy. We were starting to get complacent, thinking maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. He shook his head, a sad, knowing shake. That's when it happened. We walked right into an ambush. The jungle exploded around us. Gunfire, explosions, screams. It was chaos, son. Absolute chaos. He described the feeling of being pinned down, the bullets whizzing past his head, the fear that paralyzed him. He saw men falling all around him, some screaming in pain, others silent, still. I didn't know what to do, he said. I just froze. I couldn't move, I couldn't think. I was just scared. Then, he saw Sergeant Miller, the same tough sergeant from basic training, barking orders, rallying the troops. He saw I was frozen, Grandpa Joe said. He ran over to me, grabbed me by the collar, and yelled in my face, "Get your head in the game, soldier. Start shooting." The sergeant's words snapped him out of it. He grabbed his rifle and started firing, blindly at first, then with more purpose as he regained his composure. I don't know how long the firefight lasted, he said. It felt like an eternity. But finally, the enemy retreated. We had survived. But not everyone did. He paused, his voice choked with emotion. We lost 3 good men that day, he said. 3 men I had trained with, eaten with, laughed with. They were gone. Just like that. He described the aftermath of the battle. The wounded being treated, the dead being collected, the silence that descended over the jungle. It was then that I realized what war really was, he said. It wasn't glory, it wasn't honor, it wasn't patriotism. It was death. It was suffering. It was loss. He looked at me, his eyes filled with pain. That day changed me, son, he said. It took away my innocence. It made me a man. But it also left a scar on my soul that will never heal. He was silent for a long moment, remembering. The swing creaked softly in the evening breeze. It wasn't all bad, though, Grandpa Joe said, after another long silence. There were good times too. Moments of, well, not exactly joy, but accomplishment. Camaraderie. He told me about a mission, several months after the ambush, where his unit was tasked with rescuing a group of villagers who had been captured by the Viet Cong. We knew it was dangerous, he said. The Viet Cong were heavily armed and well entrenched. But we couldn't just leave those villagers to die. They spent days planning the mission, studying maps, gathering intelligence. They knew they had to be quick, quiet, and decisive. We moved in under the cover of darkness, he said. Creeping through the jungle, trying not to make a sound. The tension was incredible. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, made my heart jump. They reached the village undetected. The Viet Cong were caught completely by surprise. A fierce firefight erupted. It was intense, Grandpa Joe said. Bullets flying everywhere, explosions rocking the ground. But we were well prepared, and we fought hard. We managed to overwhelm the enemy and rescue the villagers. He described the scene after the battle. The villagers, grateful and relieved, thanking them profusely. The soldiers, exhausted but proud, knowing they had done something good. "We got those villagers out of there," Grandpa Joe said, a hint of pride in his voice. "We got them to safety. It felt good, son. It felt like we had actually made a difference." He said that mission was a turning point for him. It gave him a sense of purpose, a sense of hope. It reminded him why he was fighting. "It didn't erase the bad memories," he said. "It didn't bring back the men we had lost. But it gave me something to hold on to. Something to believe in." He paused, smiling slightly. "We worked together as a team," he said. "Everyone did their part. We trusted each other, we relied on each other, and we succeeded. It was a good feeling, son. A really good feeling." The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The air was cooler now, and the cicadas were singing their evening song. "But then," Grandpa Joe said, his voice dropping again, "there were times when things went terribly wrong. Times when we failed. Times when we lost more than just the battle." He told me about a patrol they were on, deep in the jungle, searching for a suspected Viet Cong supply depot. They were moving cautiously, knowing the area was heavily patrolled. "We were ambushed," he said, his voice barely audible. "But this time, it was different. This time, they were waiting for us. They knew we were coming." The Viet Cong opened fire with everything they had. Machine guns, mortars, grenades. The Americans were pinned down, surrounded. "We fought back as best we could," Grandpa Joe said. "But we were outnumbered, outgunned. We were taking heavy casualties." Then, a mortar round landed near their position. It exploded with a deafening roar. "I saw Johnson go down," Grandpa Joe said, his voice cracking with emotion. "He was right next to me. He was gone in an instant." Johnson was one of his closest friends in the unit. They had been through basic training together, had shared countless meals, had laughed and joked together. "I tried to reach him," Grandpa Joe said. "But it was too late. There was nothing I could do." The battle raged on for hours. More men fell. They were running low on ammunition, running low on hope. Finally, reinforcements arrived. The Viet Cong retreated, leaving the Americans to tend to their wounded and bury their dead. "We lost a lot of good men that day," Grandpa Joe said. "Johnson, and others. Men I cared about. Men I respected." He said the loss of Johnson hit him particularly hard. It made him question everything. What they were doing there, why they were fighting, whether it was all worth it. "I felt responsible," he said. "I felt like I should have been able to do something to save him. But I couldn't. I failed him." He paused, his eyes filled with tears. "That was a dark time, son," he said. "A very dark time. I didn't know if I could go on. I didn't know if I wanted to." The evening shadows had deepened, and the first stars were beginning to appear in the sky. The porch felt cold, despite the lingering warmth of the day. "Most days weren't like the high points or the low points," Grandpa Joe said, his gaze distant. "Most days were just days. Days of trudging through the jungle, sweating in the heat, swatting mosquitoes, and waiting for something to happen. Days filled with boredom, punctuated by moments of sheer terror." He described the routine of patrol duty. Waking up before dawn, eating a cold breakfast, and heading out into the jungle. Walking for hours, scanning the trees, listening for any sign of the enemy. Setting up ambushes, digging foxholes, and trying to stay awake during the long, silent nights. "The jungle was our enemy too," he said. "It was hot, humid, and full of bugs. The mosquitoes were relentless. And there were snakes, spiders, all kinds of creepy crawlies." He talked about the food. Canned rations, mostly. Beans, franks, and powdered milk. "It wasn't great," he said. "But it kept us alive." He described the constant state of alert. Never knowing when or where the enemy would strike. Always having to be prepared for the worst. We were always tired, he said. We didn't get much sleep. And we were always stressed. The fear never really went away. He talked about the letters from home. They were a lifeline to the outside world. A reminder of what they were fighting for. I used to get letters from Mary Lou, he said. She would tell me about what was happening back home. About the baseball games, about the dances, about the parties. It made me feel like I was still a part of that world. He also talked about the camaraderie. The bonds they formed with their fellow soldiers. The way they looked out for each other, supported each other, and depended on each other. Those guys were my family, he said. We went through hell together. We shared everything. We were closer than brothers. He said that the daily realities of war were hard. They wore them down, both physically and mentally. But they kept going. They did their duty. They survived. We didn't have a choice, he said. We were soldiers. We had a job to do. And we did it. He stared up at the night sky, lost in his memories. The stars twinkled down on us, cold and distant. The porch swing creaked on. It's funny, Grandpa Joe said, a faint smile playing on his lips. You go to war thinking you're fighting for your country, for freedom, for all those big ideas. And maybe you are, in a way. But what you're really fighting for is the guy next to you. He talked about the bonds he formed with his fellow soldiers. They were from all different backgrounds, all different parts of the country. They had nothing in common except for the fact that they were all in Vietnam, fighting the same war. We learned to rely on each other, he said. We had to. Our lives depended on it. He described the way they would share stories, jokes, and dreams. The way they would comfort each other when they were scared, encourage each other when they were down, and mourn together when they lost someone. We became like brothers, he said. Closer than brothers, in some ways. We knew each other better than anyone else in the world. We knew each other's strengths and weaknesses, each other's hopes and fears. He told me about some of the men he served with. There was Sergeant Miller, the tough-as-nails sergeant from basic training, who turned out to have a surprisingly soft heart. There was Johnson, the friend he lost in the ambush, who always had a smile on his face and a kind word for everyone. There was Davis, the wisecracking medic, who kept them all alive with his quick thinking and skillful hands. We looked out for each other, Grandpa Joe said. We protected each other. We would have done anything for each other. He said that the relationships he formed in Vietnam were some of the most important relationships of his life. They were relationships that had lasted long after the war was over. We still keep in touch, he said. We get together for reunions every year. We talk on the phone, we send emails. We're still there for each other, even after all these years. He paused, his eyes filled with warmth. Those guys, he said, they're my family. They always will be. A gentle breeze rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of honeysuckle and freshly cut grass. The stars seemed to shine a little brighter now, as if acknowledging the power of those enduring bonds. There was this one time, Grandpa Joe said, a thoughtful expression on his face, when everything changed for me. I saw the war, and my place in it, differently. He told me about a small Vietnamese village they were patrolling near. It was a poor village, the people struggling to survive. The war had taken its toll. We were supposed to be protecting them, he said. But they didn't trust us. They saw us as invaders, as occupiers. One day, a young Vietnamese girl approached their camp. She was selling flowers, trying to earn a few coins to help her family. She was a sweet little thing, Grandpa Joe said. Maybe 8 or 9 years old. She had big, brown eyes and a shy smile. One of the soldiers, a young kid named Miller, not Sergeant Miller, started teasing her, making fun of her broken English. I didn't like it, Grandpa Joe said. She was just a kid, trying to make a living. She hadn't done anything wrong. He stepped in and told Miller to leave her alone. He bought all the flowers she had, giving her extra money. She looked at me, her eyes wide with surprise, Grandpa Joe said. She smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile. And she said, "Thank you, G.I." That simple act of kindness, that small gesture of respect, changed everything. In that moment, Grandpa Joe said, I realized that the Vietnamese people weren't the enemy. They were just people, like us. They were trying to survive, just like us. They wanted peace, just like us. He said that he started to see the war differently after that. He started to question the purpose of what they were doing there. He started to wonder if they were really helping the Vietnamese people, or just making things worse. I started to feel a sense of guilt, he said. Guilt for the things we had done, for the things we had seen, for the things we had been a part of. He said that the encounter with the little girl was a turning point for him. It made him realize that war wasn't just about fighting and killing. It was about humanity. It was about compassion. It was about respect. The moon had risen high in the sky, casting a silvery glow over the porch. The night was quiet, peaceful. But the memories of war still lingered in the air. After that, I started looking at things differently, Grandpa Joe continued. I started questioning everything. The war, our mission, our purpose. I even started questioning my own sanity. He said that he wasn't the only one. Many of the soldiers in his unit were starting to feel the same way. They were tired of the fighting, tired of the killing, tired of the lies. We started to talk about it, he said. We would sit around at night, sharing our thoughts, our fears, our doubts. We were all struggling to make sense of what was happening. He said that he started reading books, trying to learn more about the history of Vietnam, about the culture of the Vietnamese people, about the politics of the war. I wanted to understand why we were there, he said. I wanted to understand who we were fighting. I wanted to understand what it was all about. The more he learned, the more disillusioned he became. He realized that the war wasn't as simple as they had been led to believe. It wasn't a clear-cut case of good versus evil. It was a complex, messy, and tragic conflict, with no easy answers. I started to feel a sense of anger, he said. Anger at the government, anger at the military, anger at the people who had gotten us into this mess. He said that he never lost his respect for his fellow soldiers. He knew that they were just following orders, doing their duty. But he started to question the orders themselves. He started to wonder if they were doing the right thing. I never refused to fight, he said. I never deserted. I did my job. But I did it with a heavy heart. I did it with a sense of doubt and uncertainty. He said that he tried to maintain his humanity, to treat the Vietnamese people with respect, to show compassion whenever he could. I knew that I couldn't change the world, he said. But I could change myself. I could choose to be a good person, even in the midst of a bad situation. He paused, looking at me intently. That's all any of us can do, son. Just try to be a good person. The moon was now directly overhead, bathing the porch in its soft, silvery light. The night was still and silent, except for the occasional hoot of an owl in the distance. Coming home was, strange, Grandpa Joe said, his voice softening. I had been gone for so long, I felt like I was a stranger in my own land. He described the plane ride back. The excitement, the anticipation, the longing to see his family again. But also the fear, the anxiety, the uncertainty about what awaited him. I had changed, he said. I wasn't the same person who had left. I had seen things, done things, that no one back home could possibly understand. He arrived at the airport to a small crowd of family. His mom, his dad, his sister Sarah. And Mary Lou. It was good to see them, he said. But it was also awkward. We didn't know what to say to each other. There was a distance between us, a wall that I didn't know how to break down. He said that he struggled to readjust to civilian life. The world seemed so trivial, so meaningless, after what he had been through. People were worried about their jobs, their cars, their houses, he said. I was worried about surviving. I couldn't relate to them. I felt like I was living on a different planet. He had trouble sleeping, he had nightmares, he had flashbacks. He was constantly on edge, always expecting the worst. I tried to talk to people about it, he said. But they didn't understand. They told me to forget about it, to move on with my life. But I couldn't. It was a part of me. It always would be. He said that he felt like he was carrying a heavy burden, a secret that he couldn't share with anyone. I felt isolated, alone, he said. I didn't know where to turn. He and Mary Lou tried to make things work, but it was no use. They had grown apart. They were different people now. We broke up, he said. It was sad, but it was the right thing to do. We weren't meant to be. He said that he drifted for a while, working odd jobs, moving from place to place. He didn't know what he wanted to do with his life. He felt lost, aimless, without direction. The night had grown late. The moon was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the lawn. The air was cool and still. It took me a long time to find my way, Grandpa Joe said, a hint of a smile returning to his face. Years, really. He said that he eventually decided to go back to school. He enrolled in a community college, taking classes in history and literature. I wanted to learn, he said. I wanted to understand the world. I wanted to make sense of my experiences. He found that he enjoyed learning. He was a good student. He excelled in his classes. It gave me a sense of purpose, he said. It gave me something to focus on. It helped me to heal. He also started volunteering at a local veterans center. He helped other veterans readjust to civilian life. He listened to their stories, he offered them support, he shared his own experiences. It was good to be able to help others, he said. It made me feel like I was finally giving something back. It was at the Veterans Center that he met your grandma, Sarah. She was a volunteer too. She was a kind, compassionate, and intelligent woman. We hit it off right away, he said. We had a lot in common. We understood each other. We fell in love. They got married a few years later. They had a family. They built a life together. She saved me, Grandpa Joe said, his voice filled with emotion. She gave me a reason to live. She helped me to find peace. He said that he never forgot about Vietnam. He never forgot about the men he served with. He never forgot about the things he had seen and done. It's a part of me, he said. It always will be. But it doesn't define me. It doesn't control me. He said that he had learned to live with his past. He had learned to accept it. He had learned to forgive himself. I'm grateful for my life, he said. I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful for the experiences I've had, both good and bad. The sun was beginning to rise, painting the sky in hues of pink and orange. A new day was dawning. A day filled with hope, with promise, with possibilities. The nightmares didn't stop right away, Grandpa Joe admitted, gazing out at the newly risen sun. They faded over time, but even now, sometimes I wake up in a cold sweat, back in the jungle. He explained that he found healthy ways to cope, thanks to Grandma Sarah's unwavering support. She encouraged me to talk about it, he said. Not just to her, but to other veterans. She helped me find a therapist who specialized in PTSD. He learned techniques for managing his anxiety and flashbacks. He started meditating, practicing yoga, and spending time in nature. It wasn't a quick fix, he said. It was a long, slow process. But it helped. It really did. He also found solace in his friendships with his fellow veterans. They understood what he had been through, they shared his pain, and they offered him unwavering support. We would get together and talk, he said. We would share our stories, our memories, our feelings. It was good to know that I wasn't alone. He said that he also found a way to honor the men he had lost in Vietnam. He participated in memorial services, he visited the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C., and he kept their memories alive by sharing their stories with others. I wanted to make sure that they weren't forgotten, he said. They deserved to be remembered. They were heroes. He said that he also learned to forgive himself for the things that had happened in Vietnam. He realized that he wasn't responsible for the war, he wasn't responsible for the deaths of his friends. He had done the best he could in a difficult situation. It took me a long time to come to terms with that, he said. But eventually, I did. And it freed me. It allowed me to move on with my life. He said that he still thought about Vietnam every day. But it didn't haunt him anymore. It was a part of his past, but it wasn't his whole future. I'm at peace now, he said. I've found happiness. I've built a good life. And I'm grateful for that. He reached over and squeezed my hand, his eyes filled with warmth and love. Life is good, son. Life is good. The sun climbed higher in the sky, bathing the porch in its golden light. The air was filled with the sounds of birds singing, a symphony of life and hope. Finding peace wasn't easy, Grandpa Joe said, the sun glinting off the silver in his hair. It took a long time, and it was a journey with lots of twists and turns. He explained that a big part of it was learning to accept what he couldn't change. I couldn't change the past, he said. I couldn't bring back the men we lost. I couldn't undo the things that had happened. All I could do was learn from it, and try to make the future better. He also found peace in helping others. His work at the Veterans Center was incredibly rewarding. He felt like he was making a difference in the lives of other veterans who were struggling to readjust to civilian life. It gave me a sense of purpose, he said. It made me feel like my experiences in Vietnam hadn't been for nothing. He also found peace in his faith. He had always been a religious man, but his faith had been tested by the war. He eventually came back to it, and it gave him strength and comfort. I realized that God was with me, even in the darkest of times, he said. And that gave me hope. He emphasized that finding peace was a personal journey. What worked for him might not work for everyone. But he encouraged anyone who was struggling with trauma to seek help, to talk to someone, to find healthy ways to cope. Don't try to go it alone, he said. There are people who care about you, people who want to help you. Don't be afraid to reach out. He said that he was grateful for the peace that he had found. He knew that he would never completely forget about Vietnam. But it didn't control his life anymore. He was free. I'm at peace with myself, he said. I'm at peace with my past. And I'm grateful for the present. He smiled, a warm, genuine smile that lit up his face. Life is good, son. Life is good. The sun was now high in the sky, bathing the porch in its warm, golden light. The air was filled with the sounds of birds singing, a symphony of life and hope. The swing creaked gently back and forth, a soothing rhythm that echoed the peace in Grandpa Joe's heart. Looking back on it all, Grandpa Joe said, his eyes twinkling, I've learned a lot. Things they don't teach you in school. He said that the most important lesson he learned was the value of human connection. Those bonds I formed with my fellow soldiers, he said. They were the most important thing that came out of the war. They taught me what it means to be a friend, what it means to be a brother. He also learned the importance of resilience. Life is tough, he said. It throws you curveballs. It knocks you down. But you can't give up. You have to get back up and keep fighting. He learned the importance of compassion. The world needs more kindness, he said. More empathy. More understanding. We need to treat each other with respect, even when we disagree. He learned the importance of forgiveness. Holding on to anger and resentment only hurts you, he said. You have to let go of the past, and forgive those who have wronged you. And you have to forgive yourself. He learned the importance of gratitude. We take so much for granted, he said. We forget to appreciate the simple things in life. Our families, our friends, our health, our freedom. We need to be grateful for every day that we have. He said that he wouldn't trade his experiences in Vietnam for anything. It was a difficult time, he said. It was a painful time. But it made me who I am today. It taught me valuable lessons that I wouldn't have learned any other way. He looked at me, his eyes filled with wisdom and love. The most important thing, he said, is to live a good life. To be a good person. To make a difference in the world. He paused, smiling. And to always remember to tell the people you love how much they mean to you. The sun was now shining brightly, warming our faces and filling our hearts with hope. The porch swing creaked gently back and forth, a soothing rhythm that echoed the peace in Grandpa Joe's heart. Our time together was coming to an end, but the lessons he had shared would stay with me forever. It might sound strange, Grandpa Joe said, a faraway look in his eyes, but I'm actually proud of my service. Not proud of the war itself, mind you. But proud of what I did, proud of what we accomplished, and proud of the man it made me. He explained that, despite the horrors he witnessed, he wouldn't trade the experience for anything. It taught me the meaning of sacrifice, he said. It taught me the value of teamwork. It taught me the importance of standing up for what you believe in, even when it's hard. He said that he was grateful for the friendships he had made in Vietnam. Those guys were my brothers, he said. We went through hell together. We relied on each other for survival. We shared a bond that no one else could understand. He was also grateful for the opportunity to serve his country. I believe in America, he said. I believe in freedom. I believe in democracy. And I was willing to fight for those things, even if it meant putting my own life on the line. He said that he was grateful for the lessons he had learned about life, about love, about loss. I learned that life is precious, he said. It's fragile. It can be taken away in an instant. We need to appreciate every moment that we have. He learned that love is the most powerful force in the world. It can heal wounds, it can mend hearts, it can bring people together, he said. We need to cherish the love that we have in our lives. He learned that loss is a part of life. We all experience loss, he said. It's inevitable. But we can't let it define us. We have to learn to cope with it, to move on, to find new meaning in our lives. He smiled, a warm, genuine smile that lit up his face. I'm proud of the man I am today, he said. I'm proud of the life I've built. And I'm grateful for everything that I have. The sun was shining brightly, warming our faces and filling our hearts with hope. The porch swing creaked gently back and forth, a soothing rhythm that echoed the peace in Grandpa Joe's heart. The end of his story was near, but the impact of his words would last a lifetime. If there's one thing I want you to take away from all this, son, Grandpa Joe said, his voice firm but gentle, it's that war is a terrible thing. It's a waste of life, a waste of resources, a waste of potential. He said that he hoped that future generations would learn from the mistakes of the past and find peaceful ways to resolve conflicts. We need to talk to each other, he said. We need to listen to each other. We need to try to understand each other's perspectives. We can't just resort to violence every time we disagree. He also said that it's important to support our veterans. They've given so much for our country, he said. They deserve our respect, our gratitude, and our support. We need to make sure that they have access to the healthcare, the education, and the job opportunities that they need to succeed. He said that it's important to remember the sacrifices that were made in Vietnam. We need to remember the men and women who lost their lives, he said. We need to remember the families who were torn apart. We need to remember the lessons that we learned, so that we don't repeat the same mistakes again. He looked at me, his eyes filled with sincerity. War is not the answer, he said. Peace is the answer. We need to strive for peace, always. It's the only way to build a better future for our children and our grandchildren. He paused, taking a deep breath. And remember, son, he said, be a good person. Be kind. Be compassionate. Be grateful. And tell the people you love how much they mean to you. He smiled, a warm, genuine smile that lit up his face. That's all I have to say, he said. Thank you for listening. The sun was now high in the sky, bathing the porch in its warm, golden light. The air was filled with the sounds of birds singing, a symphony of life and hope. The porch swing creaked gently back and forth, a soothing rhythm that echoed the peace in Grandpa Joe's heart. The story was over, but its message would resonate forever. What do I want to be remembered for? Grandpa Joe pondered, stroking his chin thoughtfully. That's a good question, son. He said that he didn't care about being famous, or wealthy, or powerful. He just wanted to be remembered as a good man. I want to be remembered as someone who loved his family, who cared about his friends, who tried to make the world a better place, he said. That's all that matters. He also wanted to be remembered as a survivor. I went through a lot in my life, he said. I faced challenges, I experienced loss, I made mistakes. But I never gave up. I kept fighting. I kept learning. I kept growing. He wanted to be remembered as someone who learned from his experiences in Vietnam. I don't want people to glorify war, he said. I don't want them to romanticize it. I want them to understand that it's a terrible thing, that it should be avoided at all costs. He wanted to be remembered as someone who advocated for peace. I believe in peace, he said. I believe that it's possible to create a world where everyone can live in harmony. We just have to work for it. He wanted to be remembered as someone who supported his fellow veterans. They deserve our respect, our gratitude, and our support, he said. We need to make sure that they're taken care of, that they have the resources they need to live happy, healthy lives. He paused, looking at me with a twinkle in his eye. And I want to be remembered as someone who told a good story, he said. Someone who made people laugh, someone who made people think, someone who made people feel. He smiled, a warm, genuine smile that lit up his face. That's my legacy, he said. That's what I want to leave behind. The sun was shining brightly, warming our faces and filling our hearts with hope. The porch swing creaked gently back and forth, a soothing rhythm that echoed the peace in Grandpa Joe's heart. His story was coming to an end, but his legacy would live on forever. I sat there for a moment, absorbing everything Grandpa Joe had told me. The sun felt warm on my face, but a shiver ran down my spine as I considered the weight of his experiences. Thank you, Grandpa, I said, my voice thick with emotion. For sharing all of this with me. It means a lot. He smiled and squeezed my hand. You're welcome, son. I'm glad I did it. I wanted you to know. I knew that he had given me a precious gift, his story. A story of courage, loss, resilience, and hope. A story that I would carry with me for the rest of my life. I thought about what he had said about his legacy. About wanting to be remembered as a good man, as someone who made a difference in the world. I realized that he already was. He was a hero in my eyes. Not because of the war, but because of the way he had lived his life since then. Because of his kindness, his compassion, his strength, and his unwavering love for his family. He had faced unimaginable challenges, but he had never given up. He had found peace, he had built a good life, and he had inspired countless others along the way. That was his legacy. And it was a legacy that I was proud to be a part of. I stood up and hugged him tightly. I love you, Grandpa, I said. I love you too, son, he said, his voice filled with emotion. We stood there for a moment, embraced in the warmth of the morning sun. The porch swing creaked gently back and forth, a soothing rhythm that echoed the love in our hearts. As I walked away, I knew that I would never forget this day. I had learned so much from Grandpa Joe. About war, about life, about what it means to be a good person. And I knew that I would do everything in my power to honor his legacy, to live a life that would make him proud. A life filled with kindness, compassion, resilience, and hope. The sun shone brightly, illuminating the path ahead. A path that I would walk with a newfound sense of purpose and gratitude, thanks to the wisdom and love of my Grandpa Joe. The story had ended, but the journey was just beginning. I turned back one last time before leaving the porch. Grandpa Joe was still sitting in the swing, watching me go. The morning sun was shining directly on his face, highlighting the lines etched by time and experience. He wasn't smiling, but there was a peaceful expression on his face. A sense of contentment, a sense of closure. He looked like a man who had come to terms with his past, who had found peace in the present, and who was ready to face the future with hope and optimism. He raised his hand in a final wave, his eyes twinkling in the sunlight. I waved back, a lump forming in my throat. As I walked down the driveway, I glanced back one more time. Grandpa Joe was still there, sitting on the porch, watching me go. He was a symbol of strength, resilience, and hope. A testament to the power of the human spirit. I knew that I would never forget him, and I would never forget his story. It was a story that would stay with me forever, a reminder of the importance of kindness, compassion, and love. I drove away,